Probably we can start. Okay, so welcome to the 7th edition of the Siena conference on the Europe of the future. And before having the rector, Professor Di Pietra, to welcome everybody.
To welcome here at the first day of the 7th edition of the Siena Conference on the Europe of the Future, here in the remarkable setting of the Certosa di Pontigliano. Over the next 3 days, the conference will invite us to confront some of the most urgent questions facing Europe today. And the title and the spirit of this edition, A Third Way for Europe, capture precisely the challenge before us. In fact, we know that Europe is no longer operating in a stable international order. Energy dependence, digital vulnerability, defense autonomy, demographic pressure, and institutional complexity are no longer abstract policy issues, but they are a strategic test of Europe's ability to act and to innovate. So this is why the concept of pragmatic federalism is so central to this conference. Not federalism as an abstract constitutional debate, but as a method, a way to solve concrete problems and to build coalition where action is possible. So today we will begin with the institutional welcome and the introduction to this 7th edition of the conference. This will be followed by the opening session, which will reflect on the main ideas emerging from the with the help also of different students, represent one of the most distinctive features and elements of the Siena conference, and they are designed to produce a proposal, to be practical. And each of the 4 groups will address one of the major European trade-off. We have the first one that is on democracy and efficiency, the second one on regulation and innovation, the third one on the real cost of defense, and the last one on the operational meaning of pragmatic federalism. And this will be, before this, we will have a short introduction from 4 introducers of each of the problem setting and solving group, so that we will be divided into 4 rooms to discuss and to propose something practical about this trade-off. So, and I conclude, today is not only the opening of a conference, it's the beginning of a collective problem-solving process, and is a process that recognizes the scale of the threats that we are faced, but also the possibility of transforming them into a new European project. So with this spirit, and really I conclude, I'm pleased to open the first day of the Siena conference on the Europe of the future. Thank you all, and I wish you everyone a pleasant day. Thank you.
Gabriele, how old are you?
24. 24.
I thought you were a little bit younger.
Younger.
Okay.
It's the short hair.
No, he also looks like Comolli, the Italian tennis player. No, Gabriele is an important element, sign, symptom of what we are trying to do this year. We will have more than half of the participants being less than 30, so you are very much in the... And we will very much need your energy. You're being very concise with the introduction of the conference. And let me introduce now our more than distinguished, magnifico host of the entire conference. The Università di Siena should be very much in the middle of this slide. Who did this slide? Yeah, okay, was Antonio. Okay. Università di Siena is our most important partner. And it has been so for 5 years. This is the 7th edition. And let me give the floor to Roberto Di Pietro.
That was involved in the organization of this new opportunity to reflect on relevant strategical issues, I mean, affecting our life, affecting our way of life, affecting the quality of our life in this part of the world. For the University of Siena, this involvement is important because some of our colleagues are, I mean, studying and doing research in these fields. So I'm referring to Simone Borghesi, to Massimiliano Montini, to Luca Verzichelli, and some others, and all the students involved in the working groups organized in the very complex program that has the aim to, I mean, to address these topics and to, I mean, identify possible perspectives, new perspectives, and possibly solutions. Let me draw your attention on the place where we are. Siena and its circle of walls. This is a picture of Siena dating back some centuries ago. Siena is one of the cities fully surrounded by a circle of walls. That means security for the people inside the walls. That means the protection. That means the possibility to live in peace if you are inside. That means the possibility to share common ideals, common perspectives about the life of the Chinese people. And now imagine that this is not Siena, this is Europe, fully surrounded by a circle of walls. For the people inside, Europe, in this perspective, could be enough safe, could be, I mean, enough protected through the walls, and finding a way to, I mean, warranty an high quality of standards for the European people living inside the walls. And for the rest of the other people outside of the walls, this is a not acceptable privilege. And I mean, there is a contrast. I don't know if you will discuss about it in the forthcoming days, but this was one of the perspectives of Italo Calvino in its novels about the invisible cities. And in particular, Ersilia, one of the cities, I mean, described in a provocative ways by Italo Calvino. If you have time, please have a look on this novel from this important novelist here in Italy in the last century. So it is important to try to understand how to manage the existence of these walls, the importance of the protection, and also about the fact that you can see the walls, but you have to imagine that there are 7 gates. So you can see the walls, but also you can see the gates. And the gates are most important probably than the walls. Thank you for what you will, try to identify and to, prospect for our future. Thank you so much.
Okay, so probably we can go to the first plenary session, if I'm not wrong. So I would ask Maria, Calypso, Lilith, who is Lilith here? Probably yes. Barbara is online. Well, all the participants to the first plenary to come here. So in the meantime, I will introduce the concept paper. So you come. And Liliana too. Liliana Smith. So we have a 4 all-women panel for the opening session. Is Lilith around? Well, she should. Yes. Again, Roberto, rompi condivisione, like this. Go to my slides. Yeah. Okay. Introduce some of the ideas of the concept paper that you hopefully found in our very many emails in these very last days. And again, it is for you to provide the feedback, but also to try to frame together the rest of the conference. So quickly, first of all, why should we very much wake up? This is about also trying to better understand what we mean by competitiveness, no? What maybe somebody like Mario Draghi meant by competitiveness. This is a quite interesting picture, and probably the most important thing here is on our left side. We have only one company from the European Union, being among the 50 largest in terms of financial value of the world. It is ASML from Netherlands. We only have one large platform, large social network, among the 27 that have been identified by the European Commission as ones to be regulated with the Digital Service Act. It is Zalando from Germany. And as Maria's paper, Reimagine Europe paper, says, we only have 3 large language models, foundational models, being conceived by European companies, by Mistral, I suppose, out of 62. I think probably the most striking number is that we only have one European EU company among the 50 largest in the world. And this also means that if you again consider for a second market capitalization as a proxy of competitiveness, I don't know if you, Matt, would agree with that, it is enough to consider one of the 7 big sisters, can be Nvidia, to have a market capitalization which is almost 50% of the entire market capitalization of all companies listed on the Euronext. Euronext being European financial stock markets, but for the German, basically. I mean, this is a vulnerability for Europe because this means that we do not have enough private money to build the future, or to be more precise, that we are losing our savings to other systems. It is also, by the way, this very picture, a sign of another vulnerability, the vulnerability of a different system. The United States may explode out of this bubble. Especially Jan would have a different opinion on that. But still, it is quite striking. Again, talking about something that the economist remarked quite often. Notwithstanding our economic weakness, we are still paradoxically the part of the world where we can probably better pursue, this at least what the numbers say, life, liberty, and happiness, which is the 3 foundational rights that somebody called Thomas Jefferson, as you know, John, put as the beginning of the American history, if you want. In terms of life, we still have 4 of the 10 countries with the longest life expectancy. Once we adjust life expectancy by chronic disease, we have actually 6 of the 10 most free countries of the world. And by the way, I think another one happens to be still European, Norway. And also in terms of happiness, we are faring rather well, for various reasons. However, there are vulnerabilities. Again, if we consider life expectancy, for instance, right, we still are the place where life lasts longer, but our healthcare system are under very much stress. This is one line is the percentage of GDP that is spent on public healthcare expenditure. The other line is the number of people who are the percentage of population which is above 65, and there is a growing tension. So this puts very much under strain the healthcare system. So our doing very well on life. Also, in terms of happiness, this is probably one of the most striking numbers. It is very true that we are relatively happy with our present, and yes, we are almost as gloom when it comes to our future. The response to the question, would your children do better or worse than you? is such that 5 out of the 10 most pessimistic countries in the world are from the European Union. And by the way, for some reason, the second most pessimistic is Italy. Number 3, we said we are the most free part of the world. Freedom normally is associated to democracy. The two concepts are quite different. As Luca and Calypso may know very well, they are not the same thing. And yet, if we consider democracy, apparently, numbers, Domenic, I'm not saying that I agree with that, but apparently numbers say that democracy is increasingly less popular than it used to be, and that actually there is some sort of negative correlation between GDP growth rates and the democracy index, both in developing and developed countries. So it's not so clear whether it is convenient to be quote unquote democracy, no? So the fact that we have that characteristic is not necessarily big advantage. This is the very last slide. This slide tries to give you a different view of what we mean by digital backwardness. What is the digital question about? Digital is about information, and information is about power. It's more or less like when we had the printing press revolution, no? When it comes to information, we have all not EU platforms controlling the information, which is power. By the way, the most powerful platform seems to be Alpha. We have Booking.com. Booking.com will join the conference. We also have a Spotify, but again, and this is very much the last message. For some reason, Spotify, that it's an European EU platform, it really changed history, in the history of at least one single industry called music, and that Spotify does not even make the 200 largest companies of the world for market capitalization. So again, there is something which is going wrong with the financial markets. Our idea is to very much use the problem-solving groups. So the energy of you people, especially the students and their professor and tutors, to try to find a third way on all these polarization between no regulation at all and too much regulation and blah, blah, blah. So this is the method of Pontignano, and we really hope that you will have fun. Thank you so much. So you, Lilith, here Lilith, just in time. Calypso, you also. We are starting with all women panel. But you need the chair.
Or you want me to?
No,
here?
we
No?
will come with
Okay.
chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, we just
Perfect. Okay.
Close the station behind.
Okay, if you want.
Okay, hi everyone. Sorry for the delay. Good morning. So it's a pleasure to be here today in Certosa di Pontigliano for this conference organized by Vision think tank in this amazing environment. Thank you to Francesco, to Antonio for all the organization and the patience during these days. Thank you also to our speakers and to all of you for joining us in this opening discussion. Perfect storms as opportunities to reimagine Europe beyond ideological gridlocks. Europe has always had a curious relationship with its own decline. For more than a century, Europeans have repeatedly announced the exhaustion of their civilization, the collapse of their political system, of our political systems, or the end of our historical relevance. It was a recurring theme during the crisis of the 1930s. It was then that Oswald Spengler's Decline of the West became a classic, and the Spanish philosopher also Maria Zambrano even spoke of Europe's agony. And yet Europe survived, and even more than that. After the Second World War, it rebuilt itself and became one of the most successful political experiments in modern history. During the last decade, however, the language of decline has returned. If, again, the Spanish philosopher, sorry, I'm Spanish, so all my philosophers are from the south of Europe. Ortega Gasset could write in the 1930s that Europe was essentially the trinity of France, Britain, and Germany. Today, that trinity has been profoundly transformed. Britain has left the common project. France has spent years trapped in political instability and also polarization, and Germany has struggled to redefine its model and its role in Europe after the end of the conditions that sustained its leadership for decades. At the same time, Europe has lost relative economic weight. Technological innovation has increasingly shifted towards the United States and China. War has returned to our continent. We have discovered how dependent we remain on others for our security, our energy, or our digital infrastructure. And yet, if we look at quality of life, as Francesco told us, public freedoms, healthcare, education, or social protection, Europe remain one of the best places in the world to live. As the British historian Tony Youth argued in his amazing monumental history post-war, Europeans may have lost faith in their politicians and sometimes even in democratic institutions themselves. But there is one thing that even in the most anti-establishment parties, even them, they have rarely dared to attack it directly, not the European Union itself, but what Youth called the European model of society, a model based on public services, again, social protection, etc. This is the Europe's central paradox. Europe remains a success, but increasingly doubts its own capacity to reproduce the conditions that made that success possible a few years ago. And perhaps one of the reasons for this uncertainty is that Europe is suddenly discovering that it has lost its older brother. So I'm sure we will talk about the United States. Not always an easy brother, not always a benevolent one, but a brother. Nonetheless, Americans guaranteed security on the road to the international order and often took responsibility for decisions that Europeans preferred to postpone. We kind of delegate part of our own project to them. And today, however, that older brother is going through a profound crisis on his own, the return of Trumpism. So because the question facing Europe is not longer simply how to remain competitive, how to increase productivity, or how to adapt to technological change, I think the deeper question is whether Europe is prepared to stand on its own feet and assume responsibility for preserving its way of life. What kind of Europe do we want to build in a world that no longer resembles the one in which the European Union was created? I think that is the conversation I would like to have today with our distinguished guests. Let me briefly introduce them. Maria Joao Rodriguez, chair of the board of Reimagine Europa, former president of FEPS, and former Portuguese Minister of Labor. Please correct me if something is wrong. Also, Barbara Kolm, which is online. She's a member of the Austrian National Council for the Freedom Party, former vice president of the Austrian Central Bank, president of the Friedrich August von Hayek Institute, and director of the Austrian Economic Center. Liliana Schmiek, chairwoman of the Foundation Council at the Warsaw Institute and Director General for Foreign Affairs at Ludovika University of Public Service, and Calypso Nicolaidis, professor at St. Antony's College, University of Oxford, and professor at the School of Transnational Governance at the European University Institute. And I think Christoph is not here because we are all women. Okay, so maybe two indicative questions to help you with the discussion. For years, we have spoken about Europe's competitiveness crisis, but I wonder whether that is really our main challenge. If you had to identify single existential threats facing Europe over the next 20 years, what would them be? And also, the concept paper for this conference speaks about a third way between competing models and opposing visions. Does a genuinely European third way exist, or are we entering a world in which Europe is inevitably have to choose between political, technological, and economic models defined by others? So maybe who wants to start, Marie-Jo? Okay.
Maybe now.
And now? Okay. Greetings to all of you. Sound noise is really much better. Last time we were together, we had the feeling that something fundamental was changing, but now we are sure that something fundamental has changed. And I will start by saying the old world order is gone. And we know this. And we also know that there are different possibilities for a new world order to emerge. For the time being, we have fragmentation, deep fragmentation. But at the same time, we have the announcement of new spheres of influence. We saw this clearly when Xi Jinping and Trump met in Beijing. But at the same time, we have several new strategic partnerships being agreed. And finally, the cause of having a rules-based order in the reform multilateral system should not be forgotten. What I feel that somehow all these things are happening at the same time. That's why the situation is so complex. Nevertheless, to answer to your question, yes, I think that we Europeans, we can push for a kind of third way. And we should say clearly, we are not interested to have a world order organized in terms of spheres of influence. We prefer to push for promising strategic partnerships and at the same time push for a reform multilateral system. And we should start like that by making a difference in the third way. I must say that I believe there is a clear European strategy, which is based in something our dear rector has illustrated very well with the image about Siena, is that on one hand, we need to keep our gates open to the world, meaning we need to push for new strategic partnerships. On the other hand, we need to be bolder on our own strategic autonomy, on defense, on green transition, on digital, and on democracy. I will argue, in particular tomorrow, I'll have the floor again, that all these challenges are very important, but I believe that the digital is particularly important. I don't think we can have future in the European project without much higher digital sovereignty. So I do think that we have a strategy, but then what is missing? I think we need to be much bolder on all these priorities. And that's why a conference like this one can be so helpful, because we need to go to in-depth discussion. Sometimes it's not easy to have this kind of discussion in Brussels, but now we are in a beautiful European vision, and a lot of inspiration will come, I'm sure. So we need to have bolder proposals. And then we also need to deal with some stumbling blocks. The top of them is war. We have wars. We have a very complex war unfolding in the Gulf area, and we have war in our continent. And to tell you frankly, I've seen this in European politics over the last 2 years, is that many times, too many times, Europeans were hindering their ambition in order to secure the American backstop in Ukraine. Look, let me tell you very frankly, I have no doubts that we need to support Ukraine. This is a fundamental fight. Nevertheless, now we are paying almost everything, which means that Europeans should be much more visible and active when pushing for a ceasefire and a peace deal in Ukraine. Otherwise, we'll go on trying to appease the American so-called ally by making many concessions, by accepting too many refusals. And I don't think this is our way to go. Finally, another argument which sometimes comes, well, you have a third way, you have a clear strategy, but we don't have means of implementation, so the financial issue. Look, again, let me tell you very clear, and that's why Francesco, graph based on capital market is not enough to answer to the question, because if we had a graph based on savings and resources, perhaps the share will be different. And as you know, one of the big problems we have is that we are not keeping our saving capacity in our continent, and companies are not investing enough. I don't know, this is not because of lack of financial resources. It's basically because they don't see the market in front of them. They don't see the opportunities. And so I believe that demand should play a great role. And basically, and I'm concluding, what we need is more companies, more citizens pushing for real European solutions. And again, I'm sure that the conference will help us on finding the way. So this is my answer to your question. But yes, we do have a third way.
Thank you, Maria Jo. Maybe Liliana or Calypso would like to jump in. Celia.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the paper. Thank you very much to the organizers for having us. And I'm also very happy that the Ludovica University of Public Service is very actively participating this year in the conference. So let me start with commenting on the paper, and then I will go further. So this year I prepared myself much better than the last. So I would say in general, I agree with the main message of the paper. Europe still has something very important that we should protect: the quality of life that you mentioned, the social stability, freedom, good public services, and a certain way of living. And I also agree that Europe should not take all of it for granted, because a good life today does not automatically mean that we will have such a good life tomorrow. But at the same time, I would be a little bit careful with certain indexes that were used in the paper, because the paper shows that Europe is still very high in many rankings, such as the happiness or freedom or healthy life expectancy. And this is, of course, true. And this is obviously important. But I'm not entirely sure whether this kind of rankings tell us always the full story. Because some of them are based on the hard data, and I would say this is easier to interpret, but others are based more on feelings, service, or cultural expectations. And for example, there was one case of Costa Rica that is very high in the happiness ranking, and this is surely interesting. But I don't think it necessarily means that Costa Rica has the same welfare system as we do have in Europe, security system, infrastructure, or economic power as the European countries have. Another, I would say, interesting example was the Ireland that was presented, I think, on the Freedom Index, very high in the ranking, but I have some doubts, especially if we look at what is happening in Ireland, in Belfast, in the last couple of days. So I would say there are some other layers that we should add into it. So surely these kind of rankings are very good examples that Europe is still high and Europe is partially winning, but I would rather say that Europe still performs well in many areas that matter to citizens, not necessarily as the winners of the whole situation. And here the bigger question is whether Europe can keep this kind of quality of life in the future. And for that, Europe needs much more than good rankings, and we need economic strength. We need affordable energy, technological capacity, serious defense, and also political institutions that average citizens would be able to trust. Because I believe we have a crisis of trust nowadays. And also, though I made this mistake, I think we should be also a little bit careful with speaking about Europe as one single model, because even when we're sitting here at this table, we represent different regions of Europe. Okay, I'm from Poland, so I would say I'm speaking more from the Central Eastern European perspective, but we have also Nordic countries, we have Southern Europe or Western Europe, and all of us face different problems. And from the Central Eastern European perspective, I would say energy security, industrial competitiveness, defense, and sovereignty are especially important. I believe that there are areas that are important for all of us, but surely we face different challenges. So therefore, I must say that I agree with the message that was stated in the paper that we need a third way. But the question is, can we actually propose something practical, and we won't be having another abstract European debate that we're constantly facing? Can Europe do better together? And where should the individual member states take more responsibility? So I would say I agree with the main message of the paper, because we have a strong model. That's also what you have said, but the model is fragile in a way. So I would say our goal is not to celebrate our quality of life, okay, because it is great, but we should build the economic security and political foundations that will allow this quality of life to be preserved for the future generations on our continent. And the question about the third way, I don't think we need a federal Europe, at least not from my perspective. But at the same time, we don't need this nationalist fragmentation. So the question would be, how can we combine all of these elements so to make everyone comfortable and secure in a model that is not, let's say, not comfortable for all of the EU member states. Maybe we could call it as a flexible cooperation between sovereign states. We could maybe not imposing one single model that would work on all member states. Maybe some countries may want to cooperate more closely in certain areas, but at the same time, there are probably countries that wouldn't feel comfortable in joining this strongly, this kind of initiatives. And I think that should be in a way acceptable, because I understand that some countries would like to work closely on defense, some would like to work closely on energy cooperation, some would like to be involved in border protection, infrastructure, or technology, but maybe we should leave a little bit more freedom And the freedom is one of the most important features that we're talking here about. So maybe we should leave a little bit more freedom to the member states to decide exactly what would work for them and what wouldn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Liliana. Calypso, when you want.
And the first thing I'd like to do is, because we have the honor to be the first panel, I would like to ask each of you to think about the one thing that keeps you up at night and turn to your neighbor. You have 30 seconds and each tell the other what keeps you up at night. And my humble request is that through the rest of the conference, chair allowing us, you keep in your head what keeps you up at night and what your neighbor kept him or her up at night. And then by the end of the conference, you ask yourself, am I going to sleep a bit better? Of course, here in this beautiful place, we sleep super well, but you know, coming out of the conference, because what kept me up has been kind of addressed. Okay, so there you go. What keeps me up at night? Talk to your neighbor.
Nuclear war. Nuclear war?
Yeah.
I would say right now I'm thinking the Middle East situation because I don't know how it will escalate, what will happen. Will we have people threat for traveling in Europe, whatever will happen in general keep our lives and things under a couple of months. So yeah.
Hey, Francisco, what keeps you up at night? I'm going to ask you now. What?
Okay, let's
right.
let's keep Calypso.
Okay.
Yep. You ready? Thank you.
All right. So we don't have time right now. I'd love to hear everyone. That's going to be for the break. We're going to continue exchanging. And I can't stop you here. You're being kept up at night by lots and lots of dark stuff. Do you want me to be very personal and tell you what's been keeping me up at night since not only the nuclear war, as I exchanged with Liliana. So I've come back in the last few days from Shanghai, and I'll tell you one thing that keeps me up at night since I've been back. Any guess? Silence. Why? Well, because when I landed in the middle of this amazing city with towers growing everywhere, cars, people, silence. Not a single non-electric car or scooters, very dangerous because scooters come by you and you don't even know they're there. Le plan, 10 years, It's now. Now, it does keep me up at night because what I hear after the silence is a tsunami of all of the goods. We are going to talk more with Marco and Rico and others about our single market, our jobs. What is the welfare and the dignity if you don't have jobs? How does Europe, quote, resist?
I just point out, Shanghai is 1% of China.
No, got that. And I did travel. I'm talking about the countryside. I went really far into the countryside, same thing. But you will know much better. Sure. And this is not the problem. The point is economies of scale, the rate of innovation. And the point here is that we are facing with China a state that combines three things. And I speak under the control of China specialists. I'm not pretending that I've suddenly become an expert of China. But the question for Europe is, first of all, in a macro way, existential threat. Maria Joajo, who I always follow and agree with everything you say. You spoke about the last G2 summit. We all agree that we're squeezed in the middle by a petro-state run while under MAGA techno-authoritarians and an electro-state in the making that is galvanized not just by state strategy, but by a sort of collective mobilization. We could talk about what that means, but Francisco's paper talks about how we look to the future. The measure of a society's health is the extent to which its citizens project themselves and their kids in the future. And my sense is a huge majority of China, there's still all of those left behind in China too, is a kind of collective mobilization, a sense that we are the ecological civilization, as we wrote in the Constitution in 2018. A state that combines the developmental state power through planning, policy banks, a whole story there that many of you know, and bottom-up Schumpeterian competition. Competitiveness is the combination of those two. Competition between provinces, between businesses, etc. The force of this model is huge. And the question is, we're not going to become authoritarians, are we, Francisco? How do we, respond to this? Given that we don't have Big Brother on the other side that is going to protect us. And I just want to make 2 or 3 points here. I just said about protecting us. The first point is about the power of metaphors, the third way. I think all of us, one way or another, agree with the idea that this European movement that needs to somehow survive, squeezed by both sides, needs to find a better story. I actually happen to agree with Liliana when she expressed her doubt about federal. I've always been worried about federal. Now, no, it's federal pragmatism. Now, let me say something about it. I really want to say something about that because I hate to disagree with Francesco. It's very dangerous. Just want to let you all know. Yeah, there is a great power of metaphor. And I think Roberto is still here, who started us earlier, who presented the walls of Siena. Okay, he's gone. That's okay, because I still want to share the fact that, yes, you have to read Italo Calvino's Invisible City if you haven't read before. But to me, if you ask me, this is one of my very favorite books in the world. My favorite city in Invisible City is Ercilia. And what is Ercilia? It's a city where inhabitants take threads from their houses, color threads, to picture their relationship of kinship, of trade, of decision, all sorts of relationship. And when there's too many threads and the relationship become too constraining, étouffante, they pick up and go. They take their house and they go and make another city. And what is left in that city is the web of threads, which tells us several things. One is you don't need walls to protect a city. You need strong threads. But the threads could be too much too, because we all need autonomy. And relationships are the key to our political, social contracts. So I think we need to be very careful with giving European citizens the sense that we are reinventing a model that protects with walls, etc. And federalism is about closure too, and it's about centralization. And when we did at Harvard 30 years ago a book on comparative federalism, we were like, oh, for years and years, let's not throw out the federal. We love federal, it can be decentralized, blah, 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 blah. In the end, after many, many years, I have dropped. I don't even say federal union or all of that. No, we are a union. Let's keep it. We're a union, flexible union, whatever kind of union. I like to say sustainable union. We all have our labels. In Poland, they have a wonderful project. I don't know if you know it. Let's Agree on Poland, which is a project that has an image of Poland that could be an image for Europe of all sorts of experimental stuff going on in all of the different voivodeship provinces. So the first point that I want to make here is that can we continue asking ourselves the question, federalism really is at the best? But yes, pragmatic, of course, we want to be that. Everything we talk about is how do you address solution to make Europe count for its citizens and escape the great squeeze from the two sides. And my slogan for us is free our energies. We have all this potential, energies, real energies, and there'll be a group on energies, energy to rebuild our defense industry. But how do we do this? Well, we tell Germany, hey, be consistent. It's all very nice for how many Germans in the room, or German associated or German living? 3? Okay. Hey, you lift the budget rules for yourself and you don't want the rest of Europe to do so for defense? Really? Hello, Germany, wake up. But yes, our youth in the room, but what does it really mean? It's all very nice. We love the young people and they look beautiful and everything, all of that. And now our Siena and Florence Young are working together. Great. And that you're the microcosm of Europe. I believe that very, very deeply. Gen Z is the future of Europe. But look at our institutions, they're old. And so let's be concrete about what we mean. Let's be concrete. And we say democracy, so democracy and the external one. Democracy, Francisco, I'm very wary of the statistics in the paper because the thing X that people are not trusting in anymore, called democracy, is not really democracy, right? We know that. It's electoral democracy. It's that democracy full of pathologies that young people in particular, but everyone is not really trusting anymore because the politicians don't do what they said, or if they try to, they can't, etc., etc. So what we need to do is free our democratic energies. Let's free our democratic energy. We'll talk about this in our democracy group. And let's think about all this in a horizontal way, connecting people, not always relying on the state. But nevertheless, welfare, yes, we have welfare states. We don't throw the baby with the bathwater. But as Anton Emmerich at EUI has demonstrated beautifully, we need to really radically change our welfare state from protecting us from aging, from from all of the pathologies falling from the sky, to actually building people's capacity through their life cycles, from education all the way, at every moment and in different ways. That is much more buck for the buck. So, and let me finally end by asking all of us, what does it really mean when we're saying to face the erosion of the liberal international order, what can Europe do? Let's please, shouldn't we, refrain from thinking Europe as a model. Europe cannot be a model. Yes, Europe can be a laboratory, making more mistakes than success, but yeah, we're trying all sorts of things. But let's not jump down and say multilateralism all the time. Europe is the greatest champion of unilateralism. That's what the Brussels effect is, for good and bad reasons. I've written a lot about this, so I'm happy to take all the pushback that I'm going to get here. But we are unilateralists. We're plurilateralists. This is what Liliana was just talking about. Differentiated integration. We do it all the time, and we're going to do it in a big way with defense. So, let's be consistent. And sometimes we try to be multilateral within, but externally, yeah, we're going to be full of new kinds of alliances, supply chain diversification rather than pure autonomy. All
She isn't? Okay. So we still have 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe do we want to have questions? Yes? Okay.
or answers.
Questions or comments or thoughts?
Maybe you can share what
Yeah, your
you have
fears.
Yes,
Share your
keeping
fears
you up
at night. Okay, anyone? Peter, first.
Sorry.
We should be in our demand center, because the regular demand center very well knowledge, because having so many different dimensions really unites people and encourage people even to be efficient Chinese people have. But that's something we could have as well. But to put it very practical, in the defense sector, for example, why should young people doing like fight for something that is naturally strengthened? I have to give them a vision, or they have to share a vision with us. This is a bit of a missing issue, and it's not only the spirit we have in the 1950s, for example, when we created this project, which takes to a certain age, but it's limited without.
Okay, maybe another question and then we answer. If you have an answer. Okay, there is a question over there. Yes, please. Thank you. Yeah.
The situation as it stands, but probably the situation as it stands is the reason why Europeans are so afraid of the future. They need to change narrative. Everything is as it stands, but just because the situation we are in that Francesco time. The situation that Francesco sketched is due to the fact that we are not united. We spend 30% of the US for defense with a 10%. Fiscal paradise, Ireland, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, while with the tax harmonization at the median level, this would bring 250 billions of extra revenue per year, and we give 300 billions of European saving to the US because we don't have the single financial market. So maybe if we think European and we create a European sovereignty in these four areas, rather than paying this cost of national sovereignty in these four areas, we may turn to be more optimistic about our future, because if we can have 250 billions of public investment more, 300 billions of private investment more, we can invest in the green and digital transition in the European defense.
Thank you. And there was a third question over there.
Thank you. Yes, on the maybe on the debate, which is maybe as old as the union itself, about federalism that was mentioned. Maybe we should not obsess so much about the words, but about the concepts and the meaning that are behind them. It is maybe just a question of making it more concrete. Do we want more co-decision between Council and the European Parliament? You know? So, do we want to overcome unanimity in the Council? So I think this is much more about the way to have a stronger political union that is more democratically legitimated and more able to act in the world. Not so much about, I think, equating federalism with centralization. And then maybe let's try to not to have, in a way, such an excessive inferiority complex when in fact it is a canonical idea if you read the Schuman Declaration. Of course, we can be iconoclastic and say they were wrong, but I think they were right.
Okay, thank you. So maybe what kind of narrative about Europe could still inspire a 30-year-old citizen today? We have a teacher.
We have
a...
one.
Oh, okay. Last one.
In the paper, there was a point about the information that European companies has and information that the global wide companies has. But the question came to my mind: until what extent should we give importance to the size of the information we have? Because a couple years ago, this in the European Union, we had this agreement, General Data Protection Regulation, and a right to be forgotten from the internet. So as the citizens, we favor transparency, but we also have this dilemma between the large enterprises. They would favor efficiency as opposed to that. So I would like to ask, until what extent we should give importance to data?
Thank you. Who wants to start? A teacher, politician, a young one?
Look, I will reply to the different questions raised with the general comments, but starting exactly from Calypso provocation. Calypso coming from France, so special mindset. This is about something we can call stamina, so social energy, creativity. And I believe that we don't want to replicate here the Chinese model, but we need to recognize there is special stamina in China. We feel this each time we go there. And stamina is about us having ideas, making effort, fighting for these ideas, and then see the progress. This is what creates stamina. And somehow this engine is a bit broken in Europe. So we need to restore this. Frankly, from my viewpoint, and I see this happening in all areas, we need to fight for European scale solutions. Because if you have European scale solutions, the effort will be translated into real progress. We see this in defense, we see this in coordinated green transition, and particularly we should see this in digital. Because we cannot just go on just protecting ourselves with tough regulations. This is not enough. We need to create our own solution. We need to be the we need to deploy, but this can only happen if we are able to imagine European solutions. And so I hope this will happen all over the conference.
Very quickly, what I'm trying to think about our biggest problem in Europe is probably that Europe gets often stuck because we have this very strange obsession that we're expected to agree on everything. And we get stuck. We cannot move on. We need to agree on this policy, we need to agree on the other policy, but we will never be the United States of Europe because we are 27 completely different countries, completely different interests, we're different nationalities, we will never be like USA. And I think what could help us to move on from this is that we need to acknowledge that we are not all the same and we have different interests. And maybe when we acknowledge it, then maybe we will be able to move forward with certain policies, because we are stuck every month, every week, every day, because all of the governments in the European Union are being, in a way, pushed to agree on every possible policy. And we had this situation in the past that certain governments were simply punished in a way for not agreeing with the rest. So maybe we should come back to this motto, united in diversity, and maybe it would help us to then push the economic development, the technologies, and so on.
But if this is true, Liliana, then the response to the question of, yeah, sure, we shouldn't care about the words, but you know, still we should make some reform. Well, so I'm with you, and that leads me to say that I think we're wasting way too much energy in talking about the veto, co-decision. I'm sorry, I have to disagree here. I was part of the Conference on the Future of Europe. I had sharing many EU groups, etc. And it's exactly the truth what Liliana is saying, especially when you talk with people from the Council. So trying to integrate decision maker. What is democracy? Democracy is also that if you have a majority of a smaller country that doesn't want something, they should be able to say no, because Europe is a project against domination of the small by the big. And this is why we still have a bit of residual veto. This is why co-decision happens in various different places. And this is also why if we engage in some sort of treaty reform exercise, we will waste our time, because we're so obsessed with institutional fixes. The fix in this story is what Maria Joao is talking about, stamina. It's unity and diversity, all of that. Now, these are the principles, and what it means concretely, also, I would like to say, is that sometimes we need to make choices. So in the digital space, we are the regulators, we are not the producers, the makers. But there's something really, really strong, I think, in the next decades about being a space where all of the democrats of the world, all the oppressed of the world will want to put their data. The safe space is very important, and we shouldn't undervalue it. And we should support bringing back some of the exiles from the US who want to relocate back in Europe and who will make the algorithms and all the rest of it. And similarly, what does it mean for the question on defense? So we're going to hear, I think, a lot on new bonds, I think, green bonds, defense bonds, common debt. We need to revisit this whole story. But let's learn the lessons from the Green Next Generation Fund. Part of what happened there, I mean, 750 billion, even though mostly the grants were used and not all the loans. Yeah, okay, there's a story there. One of the biggest problems there, I don't know if you all agree, is that there was not enough accountability on how this money was spent. Sure, fine, let the member states decide, but then be accountable, have a democratic panopticon. If you're in from the south of Italy, Mezzogiorno, and you want to know what the company got the contract for solar panel on, you know, X number, you can go to the Phoenix database in Brussels and you'll know how many miles of solar panels, but you won't know whose pocket was filled by who, against who, through what process of procurement. We are so opaque, which is why I say if we're going to have taxation, no taxation without representation, and no representation without participation. This is back to my motto of people, my belief, you know, in people power, because that's transparency. The radicality of sunlight is my religion. And I hope that some of you will go against me and tell me why I'm wrong. And so, yes, let's talk about common bonds, but they will be wasted. And then one day, the European taxpayer will revolt because they'll have to pay back the damn bond, either in inflation or in paying back the money. So accountability is crucial. And therefore, you know, if we're going to answer the question of the vision thing, I hesitate, civilization is complex word. The Chinese have a right to use it because they've done it for a few thousand years. But for us, to me, it's future looking. It's that how do we make our integration sustainable? Not ever deeper, just sustainable over time. And how do we do that? It's by embracing and supporting and promoting a real, true, deep democratic transformation of Europe all the way down and horizontally, and giving real power to collective intelligence. And this is not some sort of idealistic jumping up and down. There's a lot of research that show that, and we'll discuss this in the democracy group, democracy supports efficiency and is not opposed to it. Under what condition, as we always ask in social science? And we need to list the conditions. And you have to do the right kind of democracy that is productive, economically, health-wise, and on defense.
Okay, so stamina, imagine European solutions, try not to agree in everything and get stuck. So choose diversity, being a safe place for all Democrats, and believe in people's power and collective intelligence. Of course, we're not going to solve all your, oh no, more questions. The last question. Okay. 2 more. Okay, let's go. Okay, Francesco is the boss, so 3.
Do you hear me? Thank you for your debate, but personally, I'm a little bit lost with all your comments because it doesn't give me trust and belief for the future. If we look at the story of Europe, this is a very nice story in a very specific context, but it was 60, 70 years ago. So obviously we have to move and to change a little bit the models. I agree on that. But if you look at the story, Europe was very, very strong in the past, and it was thanks to the people, to their populations, but also to the innovations and the technology. So I think today with the situations, people wake up, and the wake up was a little bit hard for some people. If you take only one example of one country, Germany, for example, the business of Germany was based mainly on 3 things. A very cheap energy coming from Russia is off. A very strong defense coming from United States is off. Very big. You are German, Italians, French, English people, whoever you want, I think all agrees on that. Do we want to have a protect area where we can live with no risk? I think everybody will agree on that. But if you want to align people on agriculture, on energy, I don't care. We can find people, 2 countries, 3 countries, they want to work together. Let's do it. This is what said Mario Draghi. But on the other side, we have many, many private money in our business in these regions, but we don't believe in Europe. We prefer to invest this money in United States. Why? So in fact, we don't match the words with the actions. So we have a lot of blah, blah to say Europe is nice, this is our future, but very few people believe in that. So for me, the point is not to say, of course, I agree with you, digital. I don't accept to put my data with a database in United States. I don't agree with that. So I fully agree with you. We have to invest here. But it's not only this one. This is agriculture. This is many other innovations. Don't forget, Europe, this is one part of the biggest feeders of the world. So agriculture, we have in these regions, is very, very important for the rest of the world. If you take a simple example, in Italy, we have wine, we have olive oils. So it's very important that we believe in our regions. And today, I think it's the vision is very clear, but we need to tell a story. We need to rebuild a story. And this is for me the first thing to do. Story to find a compromise.
because the other systems are very simple. Look at what's happened in China, you don't decide. What's happened in Russia, you don't decide. What's happened in Turkey, you don't decide. Do you want to have this model? Personally, I don't want it, not for my kids.
Okay, so we have two more questions, but we need to make it short, and Barbara is
Sure,
short,
sure.
so she will answer.
I do have a question. My name is Jean-Pierre. I'm from the Netherlands. Good afternoon to you all, also to Vienna. I was a board member of Nexperia, the chip producer until recently, and I'm a former Dutch ambassador. First of all, Francesco and Antonio, thank you very much for organizing this. Wonderful to be here at this fantastic venue in my favorite country. There is so much to say about this, and thanks to the panelists for your insights. Trust, or the lack of trust, was mentioned several times. And obviously, we need to strengthen our defense and work on our strategic autonomy and so on and so forth. But we should also prevent erosion from the inside. And I'd like to hear your views on how we can and could restore or strengthen
That's actually the only problem. Everything else is resolvable if we had kept our companies and if we grew. The only thing we need to concentrate on is figuring out why they left. And that's basically what Mario Draghi talks about. It's barriers in the digital, in the single digital market and so forth. If we solved that, everything else would be resolvable. Is that true or wrong?
Okay, and unfortunately, Barbara is in Parliament, so she can just listen to the questions, but she can't answer. So Maria Joao, maybe, or Liliana, or Calypso, who wants to jump in? She can't. Barbara is here listening, but she can't speak.
Barbara, the last question was, maybe we can just repeat it for you.
I
You
mean,
know,
no.
why the biggest problem for Europe is that the brain drain to the US, and if only we could keep these guys and girls, you know, that everything else would be solved. Do you agree or disagree? Sorry, I don't know.
Sorry, I can briefly say yes, that there is a huge brain drain and we have issues. We're actually currently discussing things like that because our economic situation in Austria is going very bad right now. We are having a budget discussion currently, and this is why I had to cancel on short notice for today. And the debate is still going on, and I'm sitting in the plenary. So apologies for not being able to talk longer because I should just
in 2 days, but we have silence in Certosa di Pontignano, which is important for discussion. So thank you and see you next table.
Fuori tempo. And the last one, we must buy someone has just answered, so it's not just about defending the east border, but also about expanding our influence in our neighborhood. So this only different question during these days. And I will say if the four introducer can briefly come. Simone, Xaba, and Julia Hungary. If really in 2 minutes they can say what is the PSSG about, and then we will be divided into the forum to discuss with the students that will present their work, and they will receive some feedback from each of us. So in
10 seconds. Okay. Okay, we're going to talk about not just democracy in general, because who doesn't love democracy, but the cost of democracy. Do we pay for democracy in all of the other areas we're discussing, defense, green, etc., by being less efficient? Because democracy is cumbersome, messy, takes time. Democracy is tested by China and the command systems in our age of transition. So under what condition can democracy face the challenge of efficiency?
The second province of the group is about regulation versus
I think it's
Okay, yes. Yeah. I'm used to shout, so I can speak up as well. So my name is Shaba Zalai. I'm a professor of practice from the Ludovica University of Public Service. And I believe our working group is number 3, which is the one on defense. And we will start off our analysis by asking ourselves the questions: who do we need to defend against? What are the challenges that Europe is facing? Do we have the financial means? How much does it cost to defend ourselves? What are the architectural needs as far as the institutions are concerned? So we will talk about all these questions and hopefully come to a positive conclusions with all of that. Thank you very much.
And we will also have a couple of Ukrainian startups in your group, right? Julia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be very, very short. My name is Giulia Ungari. I'm a PhD researcher at Luis Guido Carli in Rome. And together with the team, we worked on the pragmatic federalism paradigm, which was a bit of a handful. We tried to conceptualize what it is for us, how it works, to apply it as an alternative to what could be a constitutional overhaul or a treaty change, and provide a methodology for a more efficient functioning of the European Union in times of crisis. Thank you.
So now we can be divided into the forum. I repeat, the first PSSG is about democracy and efficiency, the second one on regulation and innovation, the third one on defense, and the fourth on pragmatic federalism. So to be, I would say, more balanced into the rooms, I don't know, we want to raise the hands for who would say for democracy and efficiency. So to be, I would say, balanced into rooms. That is, the first one is
for the first one on
democracy and efficiency. That is in Sala Veranda. Out of here, we have all the indication for that one. No more. It's like, I don't know, at the shop. We want.
we will balance that.
The second one on regulation is here in this room. That's Sala Bracci. So for regulation, we stay here, and for defense in Sala dei Caratelli. Okay, and for pragmatic federalism in Sala Palio. Sala Palio for pragmatic federalism. So I will say for democracy, if...
Ok, and...
e ora passiamo per le stanze.
Grazie. Ci sei scordato di chiedere...